Now that we know what composite functions are, we're going to try a couple. And here we have f of x is 4x plus 2, and our g of x is just x squared. All right, so instead of finding f of g of x, we're actually going to put in a number. So like f of g of 3, and same thing for letter b, g of f of 3. All right, so for f of g of 3, what we need to do, remember, is start with our first one, which is the f, and this is 4x plus 2. And instead of writing the x, I'm going to say 4 and then leave a space for that x, and I can put the plus 2 at the end, okay? And then in this space, what we want to do is put what the g is, all right? And g is x squared, all right? G is x squared. Now you can do this one of two ways. You can go ahead and kind of simplify now and then plug in the 3 at the end, or you can just plug in the 3 right away. I tend to find that plugging it in right away is a little bit easier because you just get numbers right away. Numbers are easier to work with than letters. So let's do that. Let's say 4 parentheses, instead of x squared, I'm going to say 3 squared plus 2. Remember, your order of operations, got to do it in the parentheses first, and here 3 squared is 9, so 4 times 9 plus 2, that's 36 plus 2, or 38. All right, so f of g of 3 in this case is 38. Now let's flip it, and let's try g of f of 3. So instead of g, we're going to write x squared. Instead of the x, we're going to leave a space. So I'm going to say something squared, and that something that I'm going to put in is the f. And the f here is 4x plus 2. So that's going to go in that space, 4x plus 2. Okay? Again, I'm going to insert my number right away, which is 3, in for the x. So here I'm going to say parentheses 4, another parentheses 3, because we're multiplying. All right, plus 2. Close your parentheses and then square this. All right, remember, order of operation, we have to do everything inside the parentheses first. That's going to be everything in here, and then eventually we'll square it at the end. So inside that, I have to do 4 times 3, which is 12. 12 plus 2 is 14. So we'll have 14 squared, which is 196. All right, so g of f of 3 is 196 in this case. Same thing, another couple problems here. This time I have f of 1. I'm using the same functions as the last couple problems, so let's just jump right in. I'll go a little faster now. So instead of the f, we're going to say, leave a parentheses where I have the x plus 2. Now in that parentheses, I'm actually going to put f again. All right, so I'm going to say 4x plus 2. So you can compose, I guess would be the right word, a function to itself. All right, composition of the same function, which is kind of interesting. Anyway, let's plug in our 1 here. So 4 times 4 times 1 plus 2 plus 2. And I have to do everything in the parentheses first. So that's 4 times 4 plus 2 is 6 plus 2. This is 24 plus 2. 24 plus 2 is 26. And over in this one for letter B, g of negative 2. Same idea here. It's going to be x squared squared, basically. If you're not sure about that, you can say something squared, and that something is the g of x again, which is x squared. So x squared squared, and then you can plug in the negative 2 for that x, negative 2 squared. Now you got to be a little bit careful here. Notice that this whole x is being squared, so this whole negative 2 has to be squared. You got to almost use another set of parentheses, okay? Anyway, a negative squared is a positive, 2 squared is 4. So now we'll have 4 squared, because that first part's done, and 4 squared, of course, is 16. All right, so now be careful. You might want to write out all these steps, because if you get like negative 16 and you didn't show those steps, that would be wrong. But if you had negative 16 and you were kind of showing along the way, I would probably give you some partial credit because of that. All right, some more problems for you. This time, you'll notice that we don't have f of g times a number of a number. We have f of g of x. All right, so our answers are also going to have x's in them. All right, so if I look at what I have here, I'll start with the f, and my f function has 2 x's, which means I'm going to leave 2 of those blanks with the sets of parentheses as open, so I can eventually plug in the g into those. So this could potentially get pretty big, as there's a couple of x's we need to plug in for. For example, what I'm saying here is that we have something squared, that's leaving the blank for the x, plus 4 times something minus 2. And those somethings that I'm leaving blank is going to be the g, all right? And the g here is 5x plus 2. So that's going to go in to my blanks, 5x plus 2. Right, and then you have to simplify this. Now, I don't have any more numbers I can plug in, so it's not going to whittle down to just a single number. You're going to have probably several x's, maybe some of them being squared or cubed even. So let's see what happens here. First off, 5x plus 2 squared. If you have to FOIL that off to the side, you can. Remember, that's 5x plus 2 times 5x plus 2. So Got to distribute both sets. And I think what we end up with here is 25x squared plus 10x. 10x would be 20x plus 4. This one you can just distribute the 4 in, it's a little bit nicer, and you get 20x plus 8, and then the minus 2 just drops down. All right, so all of this now is kind of long polynomial. You have to simplify, and it looks like we have one that's just an x squared, so we'll have 25x squared. I like to kind of cross those off as I go. A 20x and a 20x for my x terms. That's 40x. Both of those are positive. And then a 4, an 8, and a negative 2. So that's 12, 10. So plus 10. All right, so I think what we end up with is 25x squared plus 40x plus 10. Let's try it again here in letter B. This time we're going to switch it and say g of f of x. All right, so the g function is just 5x plus 2. Notice this one only has 1. So even though when we did it backwards, f of g, that one had 2 to start with. When we switch it around, this is only going to have 1 that we plug in. So this one is going to be definitely smaller. I'm going to say 5 and then leave that blank plus 2. And in that blank, that's where I'm going to put the f, which is x squared plus 4x minus 2. X squared plus 4x minus 2. Okay, so I just have to distribute that 5 and then eventually maybe combine some stuff with that plus 2 at the end. Let's do that. If I distribute the 5 in, that is 5x squared plus 20x minus 10. And then the plus 2, and I think all it can combine is those last two to give me a negative 8 as my last term. So I still have 5x squared plus 20x and then minus 8. All right, so that's f of g of x and g of f of x.